Hello, welcome back to Lady Loves Said Reads. My name is Jessica and this is my May 2023 reading wrap-up. After I get this posted, I will be completely caught up on my wrap-up videos, which is really exciting! Let's start with some May stats. So, in the month of May, I read 9 books. 4 of them actually came from my bookshelves. So when we're looking at numbers, my read to unread percentage, based on what I hauled versus what I read, I'm still sitting at 28%, which honestly, I'll take that over like going down. At least I'm holding steady. Why are you whining? Orlando's a whiny baby today. It's because he wants snacks. Hang on, let me give him a treat-o. One for Maggie, one for Orlando. Good dogs. Right, so I'm hanging out at about 28% for my read to unread ratio for my personal library. The goal by the end of the year is to get to 38%. I've got 6 months to do it. We will see if that happens. For genre, I read 3 horror, 1 nonfiction, 1 fantasy, 2 literary, 3 thriller, 1 mystery. Genres tend to overlap sometimes, so if the numbers don't math, that's why. For audience, I read 1 YA and 8 adults. And then in terms of star ratings, I had 4 3 stars, 3 4 stars, and 2 5 stars. 6 out of the 9 authors were BIPOC authors. 66% of the books I read were written by BIPOC authors. And for the year, that makes 23 out of 48 for a ratio of 47% of the authors I read are BIPOC authors. My favorite book of the month was Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. If you're new here, I go through the books that I read playing the game MASH. And MASH is a game we played in the 90s. It's a game you play to predict the future, and it's basically just a numbers game. So I draw 4 titles out of my apothecary jar, and I analyze them based on MASH characteristics. So the first would be your house, which predicts where you live, and for books I analyze the setting. The next one is like your romantic partner, who you marry, so I'll analyze the romantic partner. The third one is your future job, so I'll analyze, which story I'd want to have a job in. And then the last one would be family, how many kids you have. And for the books, I just talk about, what friend group or family group would I want to be a part of. So this round, since I had 9 books, I'll be able to do 2 rounds of MASH. Let's draw the first round. A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Not picking romance for that one. Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey. Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. And The Haunting of Alejandra by V. Castro. Let's think about this for a second. Okay, I think I have it. Let's start with A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is an adult horror, and it is about Dracula's brides, told from the perspective of the brides. And it really is a larger allegory for abusive relationships. I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. If you like character-driven stories where it's really focused on the character, their development, and the relationships, and not so much on like plot, you would probably like this. There's not a lot of action, but the little bit of action there is, it's quite gory. Most of the tension and like the horror elements come from this abusive relationship that Dracula has with his wives. And it really, it's a larger allegory for manipulation and essentially narcissistic abuse. So that's the overview of this one. I gave it 4 stars. I really, really liked it. For MASH, I picked house or setting because it'd be really cool to be a vampire and be able to travel through time like these characters do, and they travel across Europe and that kind of thing. So setting for this one. Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey. This is a work of nonfiction, and it is about how rest is an act of political resistance against capitalist regimes. So capitalism makes us feel like we are just cogs in a machine and we have to produce to have any worth as a human being. And this book really pushes against that concept and gives you some good action steps for how to actually embody rest as resistance. I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. And for this, in terms of MASH, I picked family or friend group because a lot of what Hersey talks about in this book is the importance of having community and communal interdependence and healthy communal interdependence, and the importance of a solid support system, and that being also a way to resist capitalistic regimes. So friend or family group for that. Legendborn by Tracy Dion. This was my favorite book of the month. This is young adult fantasy, dark academia. And it's about Bree, who goes to early admittance college at North Carolina and discovers magic. And she joins a secret society focused on magic. And the magic all has to do with Arthurian legend, like Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. So that area of magic and mysticism. This really has amazing themes of racism, of family heritage, of intergenerational trauma, and feminism. Like, it's so good. It's so good. I loved it so very much. So very much. If you like young adult fantasy, I recommend this. Pick it up. Give it a read. For MASH, I picked Romantic Partner because I really, really like Cell. If you know, you know. The Haunting of Alejandra by V. Castro. This is adult horror, and it has similar themes to Legendborn, where it really deals with a lot of intergenerational trauma, and it focuses on the legend of La Llorona. This book is haunting. It's got great body horror, and it really does a good job of being like social horror, commenting on social structures and norms and problems. Kind of pushing beyond the realm of just shock value in horror, but actually being a work of horror that says something about the world. And I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. I was actually so lucky to be selected as a guest for the live show of this book. This was a book that was chosen for the May Read for the Midnight Society book club, and this book club is hosted by Elizabeth at Reading Wryly. I will have a link to our live show down below if you want to check that out. And then thank you again, Elizabeth, for inviting me to be a host or a guest for that month's pick. Yeah, I really like this book. For MASH, I picked Job because one of the characters in this book is a curandera slash psychologist slash therapist. That's a role that I could do. Obviously, I can't be a curandera. That's not my culture. But I could be a therapist and incorporate spiritual elements. All right, the next one obviously is just going to be the rest of them. But we've got, woo, that one jumped out at me. Last to Die by Tess Gerritsen. Idle Burning by Ren Usami. The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. And White Horse by Erica T. Worth. All right, obviously it's more than 4 because I read 9 books, but let me think about this for a minute. I don't like that. Wait, I'm missing one, aren't I? Idle Burning, White Horse, Last to Die, The Villa. Oh, The Silent Patient. That's the one I forgot. Okay. Ah, come on. This is tough. Okay, I think I have it sorted out. Let's start with Last to Die by Tess Gerritsen. This is book number 10 in the Rosalian Isles series, and this is about these foster children. They go into the foster system because their families are murdered, and then their foster families get murdered because there's somebody that's after them. So of course Maura and Jane are on the case. It also involves a boarding school called Evensong where the kids get sent to for their protection, and Evensong is run by the Mephisto Club. If you're familiar with this series, you know what that means. This is a great book. It's a fun read. It's brain candy. I wouldn't say it's anything too thoughtful in this one. This one really is just like brain candy mystery thriller, police procedural. Because it doesn't really address bigger questions like she normally does in her books. Normally she tries to address the nature of evil and questions around the nature of evil. This one doesn't really do that. It's not all that thought-provoking. It really is just like plot, exciting, adventure, fun times. Tension, excellent. You really do feel afraid for these kids. And the bad guy's pretty scary. I am getting a little bit, hang on doggy, I am getting a little bit wary of when Tess Gerritsen gets into these big bad guys where it's not just, you know, a local serial killer, but it's more like someone who was in the CIA in Germany in 1944, and like it just becomes this really big political scheme and really big, like a big bad guy. That seems to be happening a lot in this series, and I kind of would like to see her go back to just some of those small town serial killers. Orlando, stop. That being said, I gave this book 3 stars. I enjoyed it. I'll reread it as I always do. And for MASH, I selected Romantic Partner because I think Barry Frost is just so dreamy. If you've read this series, you know Barry Frost. He's a police officer that works with Jane, but he's such a cinnamon roll. I just love him. The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. This is a thriller, and it's about this group of musicians who goes to stay at an Italian villa. And it's like basically like this very bohemian folks. They're musicians, they're writers, they're artists, and somebody ends up dead. So there's 2 different timelines. That timeline takes place in the 1970s. And then the second timeline is like current present day. And it's a couple of writers who are best friends, and they go to stay at the villa so that they can work on their writing. And as they're there, they're uncovering different things about this murder mystery that happened in the 1970s. This one is good. I feel like it's more of a mystery. It leans more to the mystery end of mystery thriller than it does thriller. It didn't have me on the edge of my seat, but I was really curious. Dogs are driving me up the wall today. They keep running into my tripod. They keep whining. They keep throwing fits. Would you stop? So it leans more toward the mystery side of mystery thriller. It's not edge of your seat kind of a story. It's more like vibey. Some people have compared it to Daisy Jones and the Six. I've never read Daisy Jones and the Six, so I don't really know. But, you know, take that for what it is. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was great brain candy. For MASH, I went with home or setting. I think it'd be awesome to stay at an Italian villa in the 1970s with a bunch of bohemians. That would be really fun. You know, minus the murder. Why are you so itchy, bud? Orlando is rubbing his back against the tripod. It's making it wiggle. He's itchy. I don't know why he's itchy. Dogs! Okay, we've got 2 left. We'll go The Idol Burning by Ren Usami. This is a literary fiction novella, and it's basically about fan culture, and it centers a young girl who's like a teenager who is really into K-pop, and she's got an idol, and they call their idols their Oshi, and the level of dedication they have to their Oshi is really intense. They buy all their albums, all of their fan memorabilia, they go to all the concerts. Like, it really does a good job of exploring fandom and that intense fan culture. Now he's rubbing his back on my leg. Anyway, it does a good job exploring fan culture and fandom, and, you know, particularly around, I don't think it's K-pop. It's a Japanese pop artist. I am so sorry. Japanese pop artist, because this is a Japanese author. And yeah, I mean, I thought it was okay. Where I struggled with this was I just couldn't understand the characters very well. I liked the thoughtful sort of exploration about fandom. I thought that was well done. But the characters made no sense to me. Their motivations didn't make sense to me. Their behaviors didn't line up with what I thought I knew about them. I just really didn't understand them, and I really didn't understand the family dynamics. And that very well could be a me problem and not a problem with the book. Maybe there's a cultural barrier. Maybe I need to do some research about Japanese family dynamics. I don't really know what it was, but something just wasn't adding up for me. And so I think I gave this 2 stars or 3 stars. Let me look. No, it was a 3-star. Yeah, 3-star because, again, I think it's just me missing something, and it really did do a good job of exploring fan culture. Also, this was translated by Asa Yaneda. Okay, for MASH, I went with home or setting again. Since there's 5, I get to pick 2 that have the same. Okay. So I went with home or setting again because there's nobody in there I'd want to be romantically involved with. There really weren't any, like, jobs discussed other than I think she works in like a restaurant as a waitress. I don't want that job. No shade to people who are servers. It's just I couldn't do it. And I really didn't like the characters all that much, so I wouldn't want to go with friend or family group. So like, I am left with setting and, exploring Japan and Japanese fandom might be kind of interesting. And then the last book of the month was White Horse by Erica T. Worth. This was a 5-star read for me. I had a lot of books that explored similar themes. So White Horse, Legendborn, and The Haunting of Alejandra all just are about like discovering your family history, discovering your lineage, your heritage, intergenerational trauma, and things like that. So in White Horse, what happens is the main character's mom has passed and left her with a bracelet. And when she touches the bracelet, she starts seeing ghosts, and the ghosts want her to figure out what happened to her mother, because basically they're telling her that foul play was involved in her death. So she kind of is going on this journey to figure out, what happened to my mom and what do these ghosts want from me and why am I seeing ghosts and all of that. It is so well done. I absolutely loved it. If you like The Haunting of Alejandra and you want something similar, this is really similar to that. And I absolutely love the main character. She's a self-destructive type of character who ends up coming out on top in the end. And I love characters like that. Hello, sad girl litfic. It just was so good. I absolutely loved it. I actually had a really hard time when it came to picking my favorite book of the month. Hard time picking between Legendborn and White Horse because I thought they were just so good. For MASH, I picked Friend or Family Group because her cousin is just the greatest. Her cousin is there for her. Her cousin holds her accountable in really healthy ways. Her cousin sets healthy boundaries. Like, they just have such a good relationship. The way that they grow with each other and the way that they understand and love one another, I absolutely loved that family kinship bond that the two women had in this story. And then last would be The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, and this is a thriller. It's about this woman and she is accused of murdering her husband, but after she murders her husband, she doesn't speak again. So she is, instead of sent to jail, sent to a mental institution. And the main character is a guy who works there. He's a counselor or a therapist, a psychiatrist, whatever you want to call it. And he's trying to get Alicia, the murderer, to talk about, what happened. And this story deals a lot with obsession and themes about art and things like that. I gave this book 3 stars. I actually like his second book better. The Maidens by Alex Michaelides I think is better than The Silent Patient. The Silent Patient gets a lot of hype and it didn't live up to the hype for me. One of the things that bugged me was the psychology being used is really outdated. So the counselor is primarily relying on psychoanalysis, and psychoanalysis has been wildly debunked and disproved as really ineffective. So it was hard for me to suspend my disbelief as I was reading that story. And I gave it, 3 stars. And for MASH, I chose Job for this one because, again, I could be a therapist. I could listen to people and try to give them advice. I actually do have a degree in psychology, even though it's not counseling psychology. But yeah, that's a job I could do. All right, that will do it for my May wrap-up, and that means we are caught up on wrap-ups. Now, moving forward, we'll be on track. We will be on schedule. Hooray, hooray. Now I just have to get my vlogs working, and we'll be in business. Have you read any of these books? Let me know down below if you've read them, what you think of them, and would you, for MASH, pick the setting, a love interest, a friend group, or a job for that book? And if you just want to let me know that you're here, go ahead and leave me a tree emoji, since so much of what I read this month dealt with family trees. And until next time, make sure that you continue to read good books, drink good coffee, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye!